Welcome to Care Simplified. Please don't forget to subscribe for me, please. In this lesson, we are going to take a look at some of the questions and answers that we normally face in theory regarding the storage and performance of a computer. Now, let's start with 5.1. Question like, what is an SSD or HDD used for? In other words, what's the use of SSD or HDD? Remember, SSD stands for solid state drive and HDD stands for hard disk drive. Both are the main storage of computing devices. In other words, whatever you keep, whether it's a software you are installing, whether it's the work that you save, whether it's the video, whatever that you keep on the computer are always stored on these devices. Now, modern computers are using solid state device, and then the old computers use hard disk drive. Now, the main use of it is for data storage. And now 5.2, state 3 reasons why one will use or will choose SSD over HDD. Like I said, solid state drive is a modern internal storage of a computer, which is replacing HDD, hard disk drive. Now, the solid state drive works like the way memory card works. They make use of they use electronic way of keeping the data. So the first advantage or the first reason is that it has a faster read and write speed. Please do not write faster. No. It has a faster read and write speed. 2, they are more durable and resistant to physical shock. 3, they are energy efficient. In other words, they use less power. 4, they are silent in operation with no moving part. And 5, they generate less heat compared to HDD. So these are the reasons why people will prefer to use SSD over HDD. And then you can also say they are more portable, they are lighter. In another way, the size is smaller as compared to HDD. So these and many more are the advantages of SSD over HDD. Now, the second one says, what is the difference between shared memory and dedicated memory? Now, we have the shared memory and then the dedicated memory, which is the RAM. Now, the shared memory, they use the system RAM for graphic processing, reducing available RAM for other tasks. So, when you have the shared memory in the computer, they will be used for other tasks like when you open Microsoft, where you open all the files, they are stored temporarily on the shared memory. And again, they will also use for graphic processing, like for instance, playing games, watching movies. So that's what we call the shared. They are used for several tasks. While they are used for playing games, you can also use for other processing. So in other words, they reduce the available RAM for other tasks. So the shared memory in your computer, when there are so many tasks that are taking space on the shared memory, they make the computer to run slower. Now the dedicated memory, which is a separate memory, like the VRAM, which stands for the video RAM, they are allocated, or their main purpose is for graphics, which improve the performance in gaming. So if you have the dedicated memory in your computer, the VRAM, as well as the shared memory, the shared memory will only be used for other tasks like typing, doing calculations, whilst the dedicated memory will be used for only games. So in other words, the dedicated memory is only allocated for graphics. So that's the difference between the shared memory and dedicated memory. 5.3b, explain what we mean by integrated graphics. Integrated means built into. So those are the graphics that are built into the CPU or the motherboard. That's called the integrated graphic. Would this integrated graphic be adequate for video editing? No. Like I said here, the integrator is like the shared memory. So it will not be enough. So if you want for video editing or for other things, you need a dedicated memory as well. So instead for video editing, she would need a separate video card, which has a lot of memory as well. That is the answer to this question. 5.4, what's the main purpose of RAM? RAM is a temporary memory that stores data whilst the computer is on. The moment you switch off the computer, then whatever that you kept on the RAM will be deleted. In other words, RAM is volatile. They keep the data only when the computer is on, temporarily. And then 5.5, how does this fragmentation affect the computer? Here we are talking about fragmentation. Fragmentation slows down the computer. What does the fragmentation do? Fragmentation is whereby the scattered files on the disk, which makes the computer to be slow. When the files are scattered on the disk, we say they are fragmented. So when they are scattered on the disk here, we mean the hard drive. So the disk, we are referring to HDD or SSD. So when the files are scattered on the disk, they make the computer to be slow. And that is what we call the fragmentation. And how do we solve the fragmentation? We use what we call defragmentation utility. The defragmentation reorganizes the fragmented or the scattered file in order to improve the performance of the computer. So if you get a question that says, define the term defragmentation, it's reorganization of scattered files in order to improve the performance of the computer. And that's what we call the defragmentation, which is a utility tool. And in most cases, defragmentation or fragmentation happens on hard drive. So here the fragmentation is only done on hard drive, not SSD. So SSD we use optimize. So mostly when you go there and say fragmentation, when you search for fragmentation, then you see defrag and optimize drive. This is the tool we use to reorganize scattered files. Right. Now, the next question says, suggest 2 methods to repair a flash drive that has the virus. If a flash drive has the virus, how do you solve it? You must use updated antivirus software, or you can format the flash drive to erase the affected file, or you can also use the command called attrib in the command prompt to unhide. So when you go to CMD, command prompt, and then you put that attrib attribute. So if you have it, then you can use it to also remove the virus. Right. Or avoid inserting into infected computer. Or you can say that whenever you are inserting your flash drive, you must make sure that you scan before you open it. Enable write protection to prevent further infections. So these are the ways to repair a flash drive that already has a virus. Now 5.8.2, give 2 reasons why some users would prefer a cloud storage over HDD. In other words, advantages of online storage. Online storage, or you can say cloud storage. Online storage or cloud storage, which simply means saving files on the internet. What are some of the advantages? When you save files on the internet, you can access the file anywhere. provided you have internet connection. And the cloud storage is also scalable. It's scalable when you need more storage space. In other words, if they give you 15 gig and you want about 100 gig, you can increase it and pay a little amount. Cloud storage reduces the need for space on a local storage. In other words, we say they save local storage. When you save files on the internet, it saves you space on your local storage. Cloud storage cannot be lost or damaged like the local storage media. The way people lose their flash drive, cloud storage will not be lost easily like that. It can automatically synchronize, or you can access the data from any device. So if you save your work on a laptop, at the same time, you can get it from your smartphone or any device, provided you know your username and password. Collaboration and sharing of files as well. When you put files on a cloud storage, you can easily share the files with other people to also make use of it. Right. 5.8b, give 2 reasons why offline backup are important. In other words, this is the negative side. They want the disadvantages of online backup or disadvantages of cloud storage. Now, the first one is backup files are not accessible when you don't have internet. When you save files online and you don't have internet, there's no way that you can get access to your files. Faster to restore data from a local source, not also dependent on third party because of data security issues. And then also, when you have backup in case of ransomware, if you do offline and then your work has been taken over by a ransomware, you can easily get your information and no need to pay a subscription as well. So these are the disadvantages of online backup. 5.9, explain the difference between the RAM and hard drive. Remember, RAM is they store data temporary, and hard drive is a secondary storage which store data permanently. So that's the main difference. The RAM stores data temporary for quick access, and then the hard drive stores data permanently. 5.10, what is the purpose of CPU? Central Processing Unit, which is the main brain of the computer, is responsible for processing of data and execution of instruction. That's the main purpose of the CPU. 5.11, CPU measurement is measured in gigahertz. 5.12, give 2 basic hardware components that should be replaced to enhance performance of the computer. In other words, this question is also talking about the most essential or basic component of a computer. The most essential or basic component of a computer. The first one is CPU. We have RAM, storage, and then the graphic card. These are the most essential or the basic component of the computer, which enhance the performance of any device. And then 5.13, what's the purpose of the graphic card? Like we said earlier, the graphic card, they process and render visual output display. In other words, they improve the performance for gaming, video editing, and 3D work. So when you have the graphic card, you'll be able to perform better in game or video editing. 5.14, name 2 input devices that can be found on a laptop computer other than touchscreen: keyboard, trackpad or touchpad, and the webcam, microphone, fingerprint scanner as well. Then 5.15, what does it mean when we say the storage is non-volatile compared to RAM, which is volatile? Non-volatile meaning that they do not lose their content when the power goes off. In other words, they retain their content when the power goes off. Unlike RAM, which lose their content when the power is switched off. Why does storage always have a larger capacity than RAM? Because the storage is the main device that keeps data. It stores the program, it stores the operating system, it stores the software that you install, and then it also stores any file that you save on the computer. But then the RAM, it only keeps the data once the computer is on. So when you switch off, they get deleted. Give two types of applications where an entry-level processor will not be enough. Now, when you talk about entry level, that's 5.17. Entry level, that's the basic level computer specification. So two types of applications where entry level will not be good enough. That means computer that needs basic specifications. You don't need games. You can use for games, 3D graphics, large database, photo editing. You cannot use it for basic entry level processor. All right. Thank you for your time. The next lesson, we will be looking at software and then the license of a software and others. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.